Come on, work. This can and will work. This can and will work. Yes, 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 yes. Here we go. It's actually showing. Yes, there we go. Finally. There, it's working. Is it? Yeah. Okay. So the first place we're going to go, I'm going to cover the, what is it, the 48th? Yeah. I'm actually going to put this as leans. Democrat. Um, okay, I already have those. That's not going to change. Most of those are super Orange County. Well, okay, it's not an incumbent Republican. I'm going to lean that Democrat too in that case. Let's go back out. Okay, what state would I want to? Hello, Nippon. Yeah, sorry this is a little bit later. I decided to watch the German Grand Prix just because I wanted to see what would happen. That was a crazy race. That's really all I want to say about that. Um, Arizona, I've already got that set the way I expected. Um, Michigan, I'm going to zoom in on the Detroit area. And yeah, I've already got that the way I expected. Considering that Democrats currently have an 8% lead in the generic ballot, and Trump's hovering in the mid 40%. When you look at polling, the low to mid 40s. Yeah, I don't really see much changing. What's this one? Yeah, I expect that one to flip. Let's go back out to the nation, look at a state, at another state that actually, no, Mike Pence doesn't hate gay people. Um, hmm, that's weird. Uh, I a lot of people just Minnesota is very, very strange. It's the Minnesota never makes any sense. They had Jesse Ventura as governor at one point. So we're going to zoom in on them. Yes, there's a Democrat retiring, but it's a Democrat year, and this is affected by national politics. Even though there's a Republican incumbent here, it's in the Minneapolis area. Um, Similarly with the second district and the first district, I kind of just am biased. It's Minnesota is both Great Lakes and Great Plains. The reason why I have a lot of blue seats in Minnesota, even though if we look at the current map, it looks like this. I just don't really see those two seats being held by Republicans in a Democrat wave here. At least in the House, it's going to probably be a Democrat wave. Um, that's even why I have Paul Ryan's seat flipping over to the Democrats. And a few of these seats in New York flipping. I don't have the main second seat flipping just because it's extremely rural. If we look at the current House with a few open seats, really, there are a few places I see flipping. Oops. Yeah, let's try and see where I have the changes. Oops. Mainly in areas that are fairly Democrat anyway. Yeah, exactly. I agree. Maine will probably not. If the Confederacy had actually won the American Civil War and lasted, I imagine Virginia wouldn't get West Virginia back, but all the way out to Arizona would probably be part of whatever that Confederate states would be, because the Confederacy did claim what is now Oklahoma, what is now New Mexico, and what is now Arizona. Yeah, I had seen that one. I'm just a little doubtful about the poll about Montana's at large. I'm a little skeptical about that because it is Montana, and Montana still has a fairly high approval rating for Trump. Now let's redo that governor's election thing, because that was a little sad, to be honest. No, they wouldn't, Nippon. No, they wouldn't. Um, So I wanted to talk about Georgia and Tennessee. I had originally tried to talk about Ohio, but then I looked at the poll again and realized it was an internal poll. So I'm not going to change that. I'm just going to talk about Tennessee and Georgia. There was a poll showing the Democrat ahead by 2 or 3 points in Tennessee, but there was almost as many undecideds as there were voters for either the Democrat or the Republican in that case. So I honestly still am going to put Tennessee as likely Republican, because most of those voters are probably going to vote Republican anyway. And Georgia, because it doesn't have a lot of swing voters, the Republican almost starts at 48% of the vote, and the Democrat will start at about between 43 and 45%. And it's really just a fight to get those swing voters who fit into that white college educated demographic and tend to be slightly more conservative. So they're more than likely going to vote Republican anyway. So it's not that the race won't be close in terms of yeah, I'll get to the your comment, Nooks, in just a minute, and Nippon, I'll get to that and after I get to Nooks Master. Uh, yeah, it's not that the race in Georgia won't be close. It'll be within 6%, 5 or 6%. The thing is, it's much more difficult for Stacey Abrams to make the gain, to make up that gap, than it would be to make up a 6% gap in, say, Ohio or another place like that, where there's a ton of swing voters. So, yeah, the reason why the House is flipping, the Democrats, meaning, well, the Republicans would lose 22 seats and the Democrats pick up 28 seats. It's just because, again, the Democrats have about an 8% lead in the generic ballot, which is about where they need to be to just barely win the House. Part of that's because of gerrymandering that is slightly in favor of the Republicans, but it's also because Democrats have really are only concentrated in a few areas, and that's the cities. Democrats tend to, excluding Minnesota, which is very much a weird state. Minnesota doesn't make any sense. Democrats are concentrated around Las Vegas in the Bay Area. San Francisco, San Diego, Phoenix, San Antonio, and this part of Texas, Brownsville, Houston, Dallas. They can't even win in Fort Worth. The Black Belt is a bit of an exception in the South, and that's the political name for it. Or not the political name. That's the name for it. It's called the Black Belt because it's a very rural area that has a ton of African American voters, and that's just what it's called. Miami. Though Miami does have a lot of Cubano voters who tend to vote Republican, or at least did. You've got, of course, New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, DC, Baltimore, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis, Kansas City, Denver. Those places tend to be more very Democrat, and then they're surrounded by miles and miles of countryside. And just remember, each of these districts has about the same number of people. So you can see Republicans are a lot more spread out, and the Democrats are a lot more compacted in smaller congressional districts. If we go to New York, this highlights this rural-urban divide. Look at New York, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 districts cover most of the state. And then they have, look at how many districts are just in New York City itself. And then if you look in the metro, it has even more. And of course, Long Island has a lot of people on it too. Let's look at another state that's similar. This is also part of the New York metro area. So it's got a ton of districts. And of course, it has Philly metro as well. Let's look at Pennsylvania just for reference, or Baltimore, or Maryland. Where's Pennsylvania? There it is. You look at Pennsylvania, Philly is really compacted. And then you go over to Maryland. There it is. You go to Maryland, look at the Baltimore area. Now, of course, Maryland is obscenely gerrymandered. The first congressional, the sixth, this one probably should be. You would think the 6th district would be conservative, but because it goes all the way out into the Appalachians and is pretty rural. And that's kind of something that I've been trying to say for a long time, is that the United States has this urban-rural divide. And we'll go ahead and highlight this. This is weird. And of course, the suburbs are always fair game. Again, Minnesota is definitely an exception to that. And this part of Wisconsin along the Mississippi River. And this part of Iowa, but that's just because there are a lot of swing voters in these areas. But yeah, so going back to the gubernatorial map, I see the Democrats actually getting over 20 again, and the lone independent losing his seat. That said, a few things are probably going to change. I expect North Carolina and Louisiana to put Republican governors in the next time their cycles are up. North Carolina, just because it's a swing state, and I think the Republicans are going to have a better time campaigning there. I think it's up in 2020. And Louisiana, they just got really, they soured on the Republicans because of Bobby Jindal. And it'll look reasonable. Montana's a bit weird. They like not John Tester. What's his name? I know his name. Doug Jones won't win in 2020 unless he can put in the argument that he is, conservative enough for the state to represent its values in the Senate. I don't think so. And let's actually pull up the Senate map. This is still where I see it. I'll check again tomorrow when I actually upload my Senate prediction video because I need to. So this is what it'll look like, and we can see there's a lot of states that are split, but I think a lot of them are split for different reasons. These states because they're shifting to the Democrats. Montana because John Tester was elected in a good year for Democrats and is a good candidate for the state, but under normal circumstances probably never would have been voted in. Wisconsin because they are very much a swing state. Missouri because Claire McCaskill was voted in a very good year for Democrats in the Senate. Tennessee because Corker retired at a time when he probably should have, and Bredesen is the right candidate for the state. Manchin because he's the right candidate for the state. Sherrod Brown and Rob Portman. This is a swing state, so you should expect it to be split. Same thing with Pennsylvania. Alabama because Doug Jones got really lucky with who he was running against in a special election with no incumbent. And then New England just doesn't make any sense ever. Now, back to the question about a hypothetical situation. You asked if Phil Bredesen was the Republican nominee. I don't think Bredesen's an option here. I'll do Bredesen, and then I'll take a suggestion from you guys. So we're gonna go with a blank map because things get weird. I don't think Alaska or any of these states. Bredesen would probably be seen as fairly moderate, but I'm not sure he'd be able to combat Trump where Trump is strong. So that may push states like Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania more firmly into Trump's column. But Bredesen would definitely compete well in Tennessee. Probably well in Virginia. I'm not sure if he'd be able. He might actually be able. I'll go ahead and just give him the benefit of the doubt in North Carolina. I don't think he'd be able to win Georgia, but he would make it competitive. Mississippi would probably be a little bit more competitive too. I don't think Arkansas or Louisiana would be affected. Missouri probably would. I don't think he'd be able to win in the Great Plains. That's kind of Trump territory. Florida, I'm going to give to Trump just because Florida tends to like incumbents, and then we'll give Bredesen the. I'm actually going to flip Minnesota for Trump, and just because I don't really see Bredesen changing dynamics in the Sun Belt too much, we're going to give Bredesen those three Sun Belt states. The West Coast, Trump's just too unpopular over in some of these places for Bredesen to throw away anything. I don't think these states would flip or get any closer. DC definitely wouldn't. I don't think things would change in maybe the second district would still vote with Trump by a fairly heavy margin. I'm not sure it would be enough to flip the state. I'm going to leave New Hampshire with the Democrats. And yeah, something similar to this, I could see reasonably well. Roe v. Wade isn't going to get overturned. I'm not even going to consider that as something that could happen just because it's number one, a case actually has to reach the Supreme Court. Then it needs to be accepted by the Supreme Court. And Roberts tends not to accept cases or vote to accept cases if there's likely to be a 5-4 decision. Because he doesn't like 5-4 decisions, especially if it's going to be precedent. I think Heller was an exception. 2020. I'll push it to 2024 just because, honestly, I I don't. Okay, is there a 2020? There we go. And this is going to be Haley versus Warren. We're going to remove that. Get rid of all of these. 2024 is probably going to be a good year for the Democrats. And the thing is, I'm not sure how good because Nikki Haley is a very good candidate for the Republicans. She's honest. She's got good conservative credentials. She would definitely drive up turnout. And especially against a candidate like Warren, that negates the idea that Democrats are pro-woman or whatever, stuff like that. So I'm going to go with that one. And yeah, not sure how long I've been streaming, to be quite honest. I'll worry about that later. Anyway, so I think Haley would be able to hold on to Texas, just barely, though. And she's a Southerner, so I'll give her the benefit of the doubt in North Carolina. And of course, over here, I'm not going to split Nebraska because I think Nikki Haley would be the right candidate for that Omaha district. I'll give her that. So that's kind of Nikki Haley's base from what I see it. We're going to go ahead and give Elizabeth Warren all of these. New Hampshire. Actually, no, we won't give her New Hampshire just yet. We'll give her all of Maine because she is a New England. Actually, we'll give her New Hampshire too. She is a New Englander. And there's a lot of swing state. Whoops, forgot Hawaii. And I'm actually going to put New Mexico safe. So Nikki Haley and Elizabeth Warren are roughly evenly split. And it's going to come down to who is going to win the swing states. I think we can safely give Colorado and Virginia to Elizabeth Warren. But I don't think Warren is capable of campaigning well in places like Ohio and Iowa. She's just too New England elite type person, like an elitist. Florida, it tends to swing away to the other party after 2 terms of voting with the party. It does, or more accurately, it will vote against the incumbent party when there's no incumbent in office for the presidency, but it always votes for the incumbent. So I think it would narrowly go to Elizabeth Warren. We're also going to give Nevada to Warren. I think Haley would just barely be able to hold on to Arizona, but it'd be like 2%, maybe 1%. It would be extremely close. And now we come up to the Rust Belt and the upper Midwest. I don't think Nikki Haley would be able to win Minnesota. Depends on if Trump wins it in 2020, I think. But it's still very much a swing state. I think Wisconsin would go to Nikki Haley barely, very barely. But that's just because one theory that I have is Wisconsin is to Democrats what Virginia is to Republicans. And Nikki Haley needs both of these states, and I really don't think she'd be able to get it. I think she'd lose Michigan. Pennsylvania's toss up. But I think a lot more voters are leaving the Philly area and going to other places enough so that I think, well, actually, nah, this is weird. I think Pennsylvania is slightly more Democrat than Wisconsin. I think it would be enough to give it to Elizabeth Warren. So this is kind of what I would expect. But I don't think it would be very definitive, to be quite honest, because you're just two states, or truthfully, you're Florida away from losing the election. You know, you're any two. Democrats are not that far off from losing this election. Whereas, the way it was with Trump winning the way he did with that extra vote up there, you flip one state, it doesn't really change things. Heck, you could flip two states and it didn't really change things. You would have to flip all three of those states to change things. To end the day, I'll go ahead and do that one you suggested, Michael Jackson. We're going to go to historic elections and to 1904 and switch it to William Jennings Bryan. Okay. And we're going to remove that, give it to the Republicans, and we're going to go ahead and give Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, Utah. Oh, probably not Idaho. Yeah. I think Roosevelt would probably do something like this. Bryan would, well, no, Missouri tended at the time to vote with the victor. So something like this seems not unreasonable. Because William Jennings Bryan just wasn't. Roosevelt was popular at the time, extremely so, and Roosevelt was. Actually, Bryan would probably win Maryland in that case, now that I think about it. Maybe West Virginia. But that doesn't really change who wins the election. Roosevelt won it going away, and I don't think that would change with Jennings Bryan as the nominee. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and call it the stream here. Hope you all enjoyed. I'm going to go get some lunch now because I'm a bit hungry. Anyway, take it easy. Have a nice day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.